It's the Morning Star Drive 117.8. You soaring up with sky, now's the time, don't delay. I'm sitting in my ride and it's time to fly. So let's realign, just listen and fill your mind.
Hey guys, how is it going? And welcome to the Morning Star Drive on 117.8. It is Tuesday, July 18th, and so happy for you joining us. We are ready to start another day together with the Lord. So subscribe to us on YouTube, follow us on SoundCloud, and make sure to support us on Patreon. So today we have an exciting podcast for you. We have Health is Happiness. Yes, it's going to be on Tuesday today. Practical word study and of course commentaries, updates, and news on what is happening around the world in this history today. All right, everyone, how are you doing? It is Tuesday, July 18th, the last day of the 21-day prayer condition because the trial is today. All right. If you haven't yet, go ahead, leave a like and comment to build our community. Just super happy for everyone joining us every weekday on the Morning Star Drive. Let's get up. Let's support each other each and every day. This week's title is God Who Makes the Right History at the Right Time. And gosh, I'm really praying for this trial to be God making history at the right. I hope this is the right time. I'm quite excited because the condition is 21 days is over. Every single day, been up praying. So I'm really happy about this too. How was your Monday, everyone? I Monday is the hard day of the week, and then we're now in the meat. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday is the meat of the week. Monday is the head of the week, and Friday is the tail. So those 2 days are a little bit different, but we're in the meat, getting work done. Or some of you are on holiday too. So I hope you guys will enjoy that also. So I can't believe it's already Tuesday. Like these. For some reason, time is just flying at this moment, and I am enjoying flying through this. Like I said before, today is Sunseam's trial. It is today. Please pray as much as you can. The trial is set for 2 p.m. Okay, it's set for 2 p.m. So 2 p.m. in Korea. So those of you guys who want to match that time, make sure that you guys get all that down. Some of you might be wondering why I'm doing Health is Happiness today. Is because I am basically recording this podcast during It's during the trial. Right? Remember, Monday for me is Tuesday over there. It's during the trial, and I want to be able to do Provi in the media where I can report fully of exactly what actually happened. When is the verdict date supposed to come out too? So that's why I want to switch it for this week because we're not going to find out until tomorrow, right? We're basically not going to find out until tomorrow, right? So today we'll do Health is Happiness. We'll do the third installment of Health is Happiness on sleep. And then tomorrow we'll do Provi in the media. So I just want to make sure that everyone gets all the information from the trial in that one sitting. So that's why I did it this way. A lot of deep discussions going on. Like this is on my end. People calling me, people talking about things that are happening, and I would say a lot of members are. I'm not going to say. I don't know if excited is the right word. It's more of they are happy that we're making these discussions, especially when it comes to male evangelism or just evangelism in general. Like people are really happy that we're actually talking about it. And I think that's an important thing for all of us is so that we're not hiding the things like, oh my gosh, what about this? What about, I feel like this. I feel like if we don't talk about it, this is when there's more problems because people are festering and they're holding that stuff inside too deeply, right? So I am very thankful that we're able to discuss and talk about this on this podcast also. And I think like I said yesterday, discussions on evangelism right now, if you think about it, it's super important, not just for male evangelism, just in general. Like evangelism hasn't been such a great thing over the past 10 years. Wouldn't you say? Those of you guys who've been in Providence for the last 10 years, would you say you're pulling in 10% a year just as a general guideline? And the answer is most likely not. I think most places don't get that many. And of course, when we talk about 10%, is 10%, actually, I'm not even sure. Is it 10% not including Milky Way? Do you guys include Milky Way? I don't know. Yeah, but, for me, I'm just evangelism has been a difficult thing. Even in my 25 years in this history, I've been traveling around, evangelizing as much as I can, but it hasn't been an easy thing. And I think discussions of evangelism is super important, right? And if you think about it this way, if, we're like, oh, let's go evangelize, and we don't discuss anything, and you just kind of keep doing the things we've always done, then just don't expect any different results, right? It's going to be the same. You're going to be passing 2, 3, 4, 5 people a year, maybe, right? And it's not going to get better if you keep doing the same thing, and because if you keep doing the same thing, you can't expect different results. Right? We have to, there's a lot of discussion that needs to be made. One thing I do think would be a great idea for churches, and I think this would definitely help in evangelism. And, since evangelism is a topic, I think one of the biggest things that will help evangelism is the conscious and deliberate effort to build the church community. That's the big thing for me. How does this help evangelism? Well, of course, this is also different for different, if churches are in different sizes, right? So it's different size churches, it's going to be a little bit different for each, right? But small churches, it's very easy for small churches to always hang out with each other all the time. Because if you have 10, 20 people, very easy to get the majority of the people always hanging out together, right? Very, very easy. But, of course, when your church gets larger and larger, you can't really hang out with everyone in the entire church all the time. Because there's just too many people. And when you have too many people, matching the same amount of time is very, very difficult, right? But I definitely feel regardless if it's small churches or large churches, you can definitely build a community in your departments, in your groups, in your teams, right? If communities, if you have a really strong community in your church, it creates something that I think a lot of churches want, which is, when it comes to managing newcomers or just taking care, not just of each other, but of newcomers, there is a huge difference between community management and individual management, right? Individual management is what we've always done. One person goes to evangelize, they become the main manager for that person, which kind of makes sense, right? They evangelize them, they connected them, they know them really well. But we also see that sometimes individual management also causes a lot of issues, right? Like when the evangelist takes too much ownership in a newcomer. I've seen that all the time. It causes tons of issues in the church, right? Well, not tons, not meaning it's going to break the church, but there's just a lot of headache. Because all of a sudden, the evangelist needs to know everything. What do you do with the newcomer? What do you say to the newcomer? I see to get to that extent where it's just way too overboard, right? Everything, it's so bureaucratic. Everything's has to go through them, which I find really, really weird. Because for me, I'm going to be honest about myself. If I was an evangelist, I don't want to manage everyone. Because my role is to evangelize. Right? I evangelize, connect them, get them to start studying, talk to them every once in a while and stuff like that. But managing is not the main thing that I do. But, and I know that there are people out there way better than me in management, so much better, right? Or there could be someone that this newcomer can connect to better than I can. So I think individual management works in a small setting, but it becomes way too bureaucratic and it becomes way too possessive. These newcomers belong to me. And that can see one of the issues I can see with that. Now, if you think about this, why would I need to ask the evangelist if I can invite a newcomer to a movie or sports? This doesn't make any sense. It makes no sense to me. And some evangelists are, like I said, it gets way too possessive. And it drives me up the wall. Now, I'm not saying that all evangelists, all managers are like that. I'm just saying sometimes it gets to that level, right? The thing I like about community management, if the community is really strong, you don't get these possessive, evangelists. They're like, oh, this newcomer is mine. This newcomer is mine. Because the newcomers it's like a free, community where newcomers can freely come and go. There's events going on. You can freely go to the event, meet anyone they want, talk to this person, that person. And, when a church gets bigger, the larger the church, the better or the stronger the community needs to be, right? Because when the church grows really big, there's going to be so many newcomers that it is impossible for there to be an individual main manager for each and every one of them. And not all of the newcomers are going to study. Some of them are going to not want to study, but they just like the community, which is fine, right? Like, think about this. Does everyone have the time and effort to management one-on-one style that many newcomers when you're in a large church? And the answer is no way, right? It's far better to community manage. They're managed through small group meetings, cell groups, departments, teams, outings. Like, that's way better. Like, even for me is I don't want someone just hovering over me and just telling me what I need to do, or like I feel like they're my mentor when I don't want one. Do you know what I mean? Like, nobody wants that. Think about it. Do you want someone hovering over you? Do you want someone to be your manager? And the answer is most of us don't. We'll just go to someone when we need something. We need to talk to them because we need counseling, right? And we want to have that freedom to just call anyone up. Hey, you want to go? Oh yeah, okay, cool. We have a cell group meeting this Thursday. Cool, let's go, right? So like when I was in Malaysia, I went to a Christian church. Interesting thing is, there was a friend that invited me to the church, and I went together with them. I met their friends. We went to go eat after, and like cell groups and stuff, I would hear someone say, oh, we got cell group this, cell group that, da-da-da-da-da. And guess what? The person who brought me wasn't even in that cell group. They weren't even in it. Just pass me along, and other people would call me. I enjoyed my time. I had my freedom. Didn't have someone like breathing down my neck, and I met other people, and it was just super comfortable, right? And like I said, one of the problems we have with individual management is you don't have enough time, so you're only going to spend your time on the really good newcomers. But sometimes some newcomers just need some time. They just need time. They need time to get ready. They need time to, get more comfortable and listen to the word. It doesn't mean they're bad newcomers. They just need more time. They need more time to like bake in the oven kind of thing, right? And if you're doing individual management, the hard part about that is you have such a limited amount of time, but you only want to spend it on the people that are doing really, really well. However, if you have this community management, what happens? You don't need to take care of all these people. They come in and out. They freely come in and out. You invite them out. Other people invite them out. They hang out with other people too, right? And that, for me, that community management is a lot easier, right? Strong communities help newcomers to stay around until they're ready to listen to the word or come into this history, right? And we do need that. Like, it's not a very good culture if I don't have enough time for you. So you're not going to study the word, so I'm not going to call you anymore. I think that's a very bad culture. Like, we need to have it where there's just a bunch of fun places to be and go, right? So, when I talk about this community, like community is more like internal evangelism, and then newcomers is external evangelism. And one thing I find very difficult, and I found it happening a lot even with the churches I was at, even when I was leading, is when you don't have a strong community, there's not like this internal community, what happens is people only go to events if there's a newcomer there, which I find really sad. Like, the events are so centered just on newcomers. And I've seen event completely based around newcomers, and people prepare, they take their time out, and then they find out, oh, no newcomers are coming, and then they just cancel the event. So all the effort and work to make that event is just wasted. So people took time off to set up and help the event, to do this and that, and then all of a sudden, oh, there's no newcomers, so it's canceled. So it builds this culture where you only go out when there's newcomers, which I think is really sad. It means it's a very weak community. Because a strong community just likes to hang out. Hey, let's go hiking. And you know what? It doesn't matter if there's a newcomer there. I just like hiking. Let's go. We'll talk. We'll have fun. Let's go to a cafe. Like, this is like a strong community. That internal community is so strong. You can just hang out and everyone's having a fun time, and it doesn't matter if newcomers come or not. Right? If you're in a situation or a church where members only come to events or only come out if newcomers are present, that's a bad sign. It's a bad sign of a weak community, right? It means that members are so focused on newcomers and they're so focused on evangelism, but they miss the most important part of a church, which is The members inside, making a community, having fun together, living this history out, making the kingdom of heaven on earth together as a church kind of thing. Like that is way more important. I'm going to put that straight out, and someone can report me to Sunsteam, and I don't care. We need internal management, internal community, people having fun, people being together, always hanging out. I want that. That's what I want. That's what would make me come out to church even during the week. Sometimes you're going to find churches out there that their only time people come to church is during services, and then it's empty for the rest of the week. I find that so sad. It's crazy sad when you think about that. If anything, what Sunsteam said about, Sunsteam said members are more important than newcomers. And you're like, oh, what? Members are more? Of course they are. Members are already brides, and newcomers, we don't even know if they're going to pass or not. We don't even know, right? Members are important. Members are the ones that we should be hanging on to. You know what I mean? Like we should be, like, that's why for me, I'm always thinking about community. How can we build a better community? Like I'll go to churches all around the world, and you can see when a church has a strong community. And churches with strong communities are going to have much, much better evangelism too. Much better, right? A lot of churches you'll go to, people don't even want to come to service. And you're like, whoa, right? A lot of people, you go to churches that people are like, oh, I got to go to church. Oh, I got to go to church. Oh, I have another meeting. Like it's all work and business at church. Communities have to be grown. And I think that's one of the major things that we lack. And I'm gonna be just honest about it. I think in Providence, there are a few churches that have it. There are some churches that do, and I love being there, right? Like even for myself, if I was looking for a strong community, in the Western countries, if I can name it off the top of my head in Western countries, how many churches have a strong community in their church? I think I know one for sure. I know one. I know one, like off the top of my head. And I'm sure you guys are going to write in the comments that, oh, our church has a strong community. And you know what? I'm not going to doubt it. It's just for me and my experience and what I've seen, a lot of churches don't have that really strong church community. You know what I mean? And I think that's going to be one of the, like, this is one of the questions a lot of people ask me is, how do we evangelize better? How do we manage better? How can we manage newcomers better? And my big thing is you have to manage each other better first. You guys got to hang out with each other. You guys got to build a strong community, because when your community is strong, it creates an atmosphere that allows like evangelism to naturally happen. Like naturally. Like imagine going to a Sunday service, you can invite anyone to service, think about the last Sunday service you had. What was it like? What was the praise like? What was the time of the message like? Was it really quiet? Was it really like fiery? Were people really into it? When they praise, was it just like people like, or were they like, like really praising with all their hearts? Like people, when they come to church, they're going to feel that. That's what they're going to feel. Right? Those are the things that we have to look at and think about at another level. And this is why I always tell everyone on this podcast, it's about community. And I'm really happy because there's some people that comment like, oh, you know what? Our church has a very, very strong community right now. And I'm like, awesome. That is so awesome. And I'm so happy for them. And even more than just being happy for them, that's a church I'd want to go and visit. Right? That's a church I'd really want to go and visit. That even though there wasn't a single newcomer, but the community was super strong, I would hang out there. I mean, it was just to be in that type of setting, I think is such a blessing to have inside your church too. But I also acknowledge that, our church is a work in progress. We're a history in progress. We're at the very, very beginning. So I know that it's something that is not going to pop up out of nowhere. We're not going to just all of a sudden make a community because we're talking about it. It is something that is deliberate and conscious, right? And once we get that going, I'm going to tell you right now, probably talk about this tomorrow. Probably like we need to start discussing new strategies of evangelism that's going to bring in more people. Like the thing that I want to think about is if our ratio of guys to girl is that off, like if it's that off, then we need to have a major influx of evangelism. But everyone will probably attest and agree with me that we're getting one or two at a time. So even if you got another one or two guys right now for this year, that's not enough. It just isn't, right? We need to start really working towards building, this evangelism strategies and have good discussions and have people excited to go out and evangelize once again. Either way, okay? So there it is, guys. That is the first segment for today. I hope you guys really like to talk about evangelism and what are your strategies and what are the things that you guys really think are important. But let's go into the first break for the day. All right, so let's get into today's word study. And every single Tuesday, we have the practical word study. And today's is kind of exciting for me because I'm going to kind of practically show you how this week's message can help you when it comes to the different, the big thing that I'm going to talk about today is in the message it said, if you know history, you will not shake. Like that's the thing that really people need to know the word a lot better. They need to know the history of the word, history lesson, times and half a times, the three triangle chart, like those things people need to know really, really well and do their own research on top of that. And there's because I just got a question. Someone DM'd me a question, and it's about this person doesn't really have problems with faith or they're not thinking they're not doubting or anything else. But basically, they watched the documentary and then they kind of went into the rabbit hole. And then there's some thoughts in their head they just can't organize and wow, how does this make sense? And it has to do with one of the questions that I brought to you before. But today I'm going to talk about practical word study means I'm going to show you how knowing history and knowing the word is going to shatter your doubts. right? And it's also going to be able to help you to not waver or like to even entertain certain thoughts that we have, right? So the question that comes out, and the person asked me was, hey, and they sent me a picture. They sent me a picture of a book, and it's written by someone that I talked about before. His name is Han Enoch, and he's like a theologian from Korea from the 40s, and he also wrote about time, times, and half a times, okay? And I did talk about this a little bit before, but I'm going to talk a little bit more in detail about Han Enoch. Well, not about him, but what he wrote about. So there's a picture of the page inside the book that he wrote, and it says 688 plus 1260, 688 plus 1290, 688 plus 1335, and it gives you the 3 years, 1948, 1978, 2023. Okay, so this actually brings in a big question, and this person's asking me like, hey, I thought Sunstein was the first to know this. Like, I don't understand, if he's not the first, then are we like even in the main history? Are we just a John the Baptist history? And this person was very honest with me, saying, yeah, I've seen what Sunstein's done. I've heard the word. It's all good. I've seen the miracles happen. But just logically speaking, when I see all these things like this book being written in the 40s, well, they didn't say that. I know it's from the 40s. But, I see this book that was written even before. I don't understand. Because if it's written in the 1940s, that's when Sunstein was born. So you're like, whoa, what does that mean? So a couple of questions that we're going to answer today through understanding and clearly knowing history. Remember, know history and you will not shake. So did Sunstein actually get it first? And you're like, whoa, like that's a pretty big question. Number two is, who are these people that realize some of the word? And, are these people real or not? Okay. And I'm going to talk about 3 different people, and 2 of them we're going to know. Okay. And the next question I think is a very, very good question we should all ask also is, what did Sunstein say about these people? Right? So imagine Sunstein actually acknowledges them and says something about them. It gives us a better idea of, okay, so Sunstein did talk about these people before. All right. So the 3 people that we're going to talk about when it comes to history that's connected to us in some way or another is going to be Reverend Moon from the Unification Church, and we all know him very well, right? And then some Korean, I guess you'd call them like unorthodox theologians, and one is Han Enoch, and the other one is Na Un Mong. Okay, so you have these 3 people, Moon, Na, and Han. Okay, and these are like the 3 main people that Sunstein looks at, like that people say, oh, Sunstein took the word from these 3 people. Okay, and these are the 3 people. Well, 2 of them are talked a lot. Na and Mung is not talked about much. Is mainly Han Enoch because of time, times, and half a times, and also because of the Unification Church. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to tell you guys is, will people, like in history, remember, because we're talking about repeated history, has there ever been a time before where bits and pieces or word was being given to others in history, right? Like some people learned it a little bit earlier. Like let's just say Jesus' words and stuff like that too. And the answer is yes. There are many different times in history where people were given the word, like 2 different people were given the word to. For example, right? The one that we know for sure is John the Baptist and Jesus. They preached the same word. Okay? So when Jesus and John the Baptist preached the same word, the examples in Matthew chapter 3, verse 2, John the Baptist says, repent for the kingdom of heaven is near. His message came out on that. And then after he went to jail in Matthew chapter 4, verse 17, Jesus continues that message and he begins to preach, repent for the kingdom of heaven is near. Why? Because of John the Baptist with Jesus, right? So you have the person preparing and the main person, because they're connected, they're teaching similar things. And I talked about this last time too. Sunstein already talked about the Unification Church, the John the Baptist history, and they received 80% of the word. And this is why when you compare like Providence Word to the Unification Church, a lot of it is similar. Like clouds and fire, all these other different words, they're very, very similar. And if I were to go into the history of it, just like I told a bunch of people before, I think I've talked about this about 3 times already. But it's good to be reminded is that when Sunsim, remember, Sunsim knew the word. He learned the word in the mountains in a remote village, right? So there's no way he's going out talking to like Reverend Moon and Han Enoch. Well, that was way before his time. But what we see is that when he learned the word, he knew that he learned the John the Baptist lesson. So Sunsim realized about John the Baptist and knew that there was a John the Baptist that would follow, that would come before him also. And he went out to search for him. Right? There were 8 major figures in Korea at that time. They're either revival speakers or pastors of churches that were famous all over Korea. And Sunsim went to all 8 of them and even recorded them. What was he looking for? How would he know that someone is the John the Baptist for him? And the answer is, it is someone that's not going to teach that fire is fire and that the clouds are real, literal clouds, but he's looking for someone who's teaching exactly what he learned. He's looking for someone who says fire is the word. He's looking for someone who says clouds are people. And when he finally went to listen to Reverend Moon speak, he heard him talk about the fire and the clouds as parables, exactly the same way he taught. And then he knew this is a John the Baptist. 7 of them were all talking literal, and Reverend Moon was the only one that talked with symbolism and parables. Right? So Unification Church did receive 80% of the word. So what was the original intent? Well, in order for the person to prepare the way for the Lord, he has to prepare them through the word. Like, think about this. If you go outside and someone's like, oh, the Christ is coming, the Christ is coming. Number one is you just think they're crazy. If anyone comes without actual word to prove anything, right? Imagine you came to Providence, but there was no 30 lessons. It would be it would be impossible for us to follow. But because of the word, we realize and then we follow. In the same way too, how is John the Baptist supposed to prepare the way for the Lord? He's got to gather a cloud of witnesses. So here's John the Baptist gathering hundreds and hundreds of people so that when Jesus begins his mission, he brings those people to Jesus. Jesus knows the words inside out, but remember, John the Baptist only has 80%. So what does Jesus do? Jesus not only says, I know the 80%, but let me teach you this 20% you don't know, and then blows their minds off the roof, and they're all like, okay, this is the one kind of thing. And John the Baptist will be pointing to him too. In the same way too, the same thing happened at our time, where Reverend Moon, born 1920, so like 25 years before Sunsim was even born, he was born 1920, and he began the John the Baptist history and started gathering the cloud of witnesses with 80% of the word. And what eventually is supposed to happen is Reverend Moon and Sunsim come together and they work together, and then Sunsim would teach them times and half the times, and those big lessons to solidify that, yes, he is the man and mission of the time period. Okay? Now, also in the Bible, there's other characters, like not just John the Baptist and Jesus who had the same word, but there were a lot of prophecies and people living at the time of Jesus that knew Jesus was the Messiah even before John the Baptist. So originally we know that John the Baptist is supposed to be the first, right? He's the first one to recognize the Christ. He's supposed to be the first. However, something very interesting happened in Luke chapter 2. There's 2 important figures, Simeon and Anna the prophetess. Simeon was a man, he was like, if you look in Luke chapter 2, it says, Simeon was righteous and devout, and the Holy Spirit revealed to him that he would see the Messiah before he died. And then he saw baby Jesus and he said, oh my gosh, he is the Messiah. So he is someone who already knew even before John the Baptist. Anna the prophetess, exact same thing. 84-year-old widow, never left the temple. She prayed and fasted day and night. And when she saw Jesus, she gave thanks to God. Then she told everyone that the Messiah had come. Right? So we're already seeing that there are people who are receiving even these prophecies even before John the Baptist. Right? They knew about the coming of the Messiah even before John the Baptist, who is supposed to be the first. Right? And then, then later on, then these 2 die off. Like Simeon and Anna are done, right? They die. And then John the Baptist comes later, and he's the first to recognize Christ and prepare the way for the Lord, right? So when you see all throughout Bible history, people are given pieces of knowledge to announce the coming of the man of mission, the Messiah, the Christ, okay? So let's get into a little bit more deeply when it comes to Han Enoch. And like I said, you're going to see the 3 years. He's already uncovered that. So the question that someone might ask is, if someone has received times before Sunsim, then does that mean that Sunsim is no longer legitimate? And the answer is, Well, if they teach 100% of what Sunseem teaches, then yes, it makes Sunseem illegitimate and it makes him a copycat. Okay? That's what it does. Now, John the Baptist was preaching the same message as Jesus before Jesus came out, right? We talked about that already before. And, like we talked about, this is how you prepare the way for the Lord, where you get the message in part, not the full, but in part, which means John the Baptist didn't receive the whole word, but he received 80%, not all of it, so he can prepare properly, right? Now, John the Baptist is the one that's bringing people together. And then Jesus, we know that John brings the cloud and Jesus teaches them and then they realize. Same thing happens with Reverend Moon and Sunseem too. Exact same thing. Now, what about Han Enoch and the times, and half times? Well, like I said, he discovered this, or he wrote a book, and this is from 1940s, okay? This theologian named Han Enoch from Korea, and he also wrote about times, half times. He got the three numbers right. 1948, 1978, 2023, he talked about the Dome of the Rock. All those things are right, okay? However, we're going to go back to, what does this actually mean? Well, the answer is times, and half times is not just three numbers. Sunseem actually talked about Han Enoch in the past and said he had a prophetic mission, but he didn't have all of times, and half times. He only had half, right? So this is something that we have to take into consideration. Just because you see a page in a book, or just because you say, oh my gosh, he knows the three numbers, that means Sunseem didn't realize first. No, you have to read it fully. He only has half. Because when you think about the entire lesson of times, and half times and half times is far more than just cracking 3 dates. Yes, it's a very exciting thing that we learn, but there's far more than just cracking the 3 dates, right? Because after you learn about 1948, 1978, and 2023, the next thing is, what is the interpreter? What does God say? What do those numbers mean? Of course, Han Enoch got 1948 correct. Why? Because, at that time, you see that's going to happen, 1948, right? In the 40s. But you have to understand is that's all he has up to that point, right? So, like I said, Sunseem responded that he had a prophetic mission. He had a prophetic mission. Just the fact that he realized to that point means he had a prophetic mission, right? And like I said, half of it is right. Just like John the Baptist and Jesus, they're in a very similar situation where John the Baptist was given the word, the same word as Jesus, but not all of it, up to 80%, right? That's why with the Unification Church, they're missing some of the core doctrines at the very end, especially times, half times, and stuff like that too, right? And we have to realize that, what does it mean only half? Because times, half times is more than just those numbers. We need to interpret those numbers. What do those dates mean? What's going to happen during that time? But then when you look at 1978 to 2023, that's a 45-year period, and we're like, well, what the heck is a 45 period? Even Han Enoch doesn't know what that is. It is the central figure path. The central figure path, which is the public, the grave, and the resurrected time period. Those 3 stages, right? You remember in times and half times is 1978, 21 years to 1999, grave period 3.5 years to 2002, and then 21 years to 2023, right? Like, we know that. That is, we're getting so much more deeper into this now that what Han Enoch realized in the past is not going into that. If you've learned times, and half times, and your key point, and the only key point you got from it is 3 dates being cracked, then you haven't learned properly, or you haven't realized properly about that lesson. You've only learned half of it. What is more important? What is more important than just having those years is, what the heck do they mean? Right? And that's why, just like this week's message, the main character God uses will see everything. Remember we talked about the wedding? Some people there in the morning, some in the early afternoon, late afternoon, and in the evening, right? God, the person that God uses, the man on mission, is the one that sees everything. Everyone else will only get pieces of it. They'll see parts of it, right? And what Han Enoch, what Sunseem says, yeah, he's got a prophetic mission, and probably and also announcing of his mission, right? Because he doesn't know what that means. What does 1978 mean, right? It's a prophetic mission, and people are getting a glimpse of it, but what does it all mean? And what will be the most important and vital, crucial part of times, and half times is who actually fulfilled it. Not only just teaching about it, like, oh, 1978 means this, and it has a central figure path to 2023. This is happening, this is happening, this is happening, right? Like, it's not just about who can just talk about the mission. Now that you see all these dates, the biggest question, the most important and powerful thing that you'll hear in Time, Times, and Half a Time is, who did it? Who actually fulfilled it? And we know. This is why we're 45 years into history right now, right? Yeah, 45 years, the entire 1978 to 2023, all those dates have passed by, right? The 1978 Sunseed came out June 1st, 1978. 21 years later, 1999 Grave Period, and then the first broadcast. Like, it's all up to, like, it's to a T. It is that detailed of all the things that are being fulfilled. We know who is fulfilling this mission, the actual person that's fulfilling it. So even if someone else were to say, oh, I realize Time, Times, and Half Times first, let's just pretend someone says that, like, I know everything about it. Then the key is who is actually going to fulfill it. So imagine someone knows Time, Times, and Half Times and even knows that 1978 is the person, the man in mission is coming at that time. Don't you think if they realize they'd be waiting in 1978 to find that person too? They should be the ones following Sunseed also if they realize that deeply, right? The most important part, yeah, Han Enoch, he wrote a book, he's got the 3 dates, he's got half of it, in part. Just like John the Baptist, just like Reverend Moon, they have 80%. They have it in part, right? But they don't have everything. So, when we understand this, we're like, oh, okay, that makes a little bit more sense now, right? Because one thing I am going to say to you is, sometimes leaders will explain this in a very, not condescending, but they'll kind of just like brush you off, like, oh, don't believe in that. And I think that's not a very healthy way to explain these types of things. I don't think it's very healthy at all, because sometimes people will be like, oh, so what are you hiding? Oh, so you really don't know. So you're just believing without knowing either. Like that type of way of thinking, right? So I think that we have to be able to explain these things very well and properly. So that's kind of like so do you guys get that point right now that even, who is this Han Enoch person? Sunseed's already talked about this person, said prophetic mission when it comes to the announcement of the one who is to come, but he only realized half. He's only got the dates, and he doesn't even know the interpretation of 1978 and 2023. He doesn't even know that, right? He doesn't know the central figure path, and obviously he has no idea who actually fulfilled it, right? Like if he was really like realized that deeply that the man in mission would come 1978, this guy would be waiting also, doing the exact same thing, waiting in 1978 to find that person, right? So that's the explanation for that. All I'm doing is going through history. Know history clearly and you won't shake. Makes sense, right? And if someone was, imagine someone were to ask me, well, how do we know that we're the main history and not the John the Baptist history? How can we be sure? And the answer is because if we were John the Baptist history, we wouldn't have Reverend Moon. Remember, Reverend Moon is the John the Baptist that is preparing the way for us, right? For us, right? And someone will say like, well, how do you know 100% that he's preparing the way for us? Well, part of it is we have they have 80% the same word as us. So there's one of it. And the second part of it will go back to the central figure path. Remember, central figure path is 3 stages: public, grave, and resurrected. 21 years for the public, 3.5 years for the grave, and 21 years for the resurrected. And we go back into Reverend Moon's history. When did he start? He started the HSA, the Holy Spirit Association, in 1954. And that was the beginning of his public life, and that's 21 years. 1954 plus 21 years is 1975. 1975 is the beginning of the grave period, and after that, it's 3.5 years. So what's 3.5 years of 1975? Well, 3 years is 1978, and half a year is, guess what? It is June. When did Sunseed start? June 1st, half of the year. Why is that important? Because it's 3.5 years. So what was originally supposed to happen? The Reverend Moon, who is the John the Baptist of the time period, he is preparing the clouds in his public life. He goes through his grave period. He meets with Sunseed. They work together, and he starts his mission in June 1st, where the two of them were supposed to come together with the cloud of witnesses. They are connected. right? So when we see the numbers, we're like, okay, that makes a lot more sense too. Remember, John the Baptist's history doesn't have a John the Baptist. There's no one preparing the way for John the Baptist. But we have Reverend Moon preparing the way for Sun's right? So if we were John the Baptist, then we would have no one before us, but we have Reverend Moon, right? And perfect timing too, the 1978 and a half, June 1st, right? So we are the main history because the John the Baptist has already come and they were supposed to be with us, but then we are the second part. So that's why we are the main history that's supposed to be here, right? So, the fact that Sun and Reverend Moon are not working together is just, not proof, but it's just showing that, the exact same thing happened at Jesus' time when John the Baptist did not prepare the way for the Lord, right? So what we can see here is like, oh, as long as you know history, if you know history really well, what's going to happen? You will not shake, right? You're not going to shake. Right? Our history is a main history. We had our John the Baptist. We have the Word. And we have the one that fulfills the Word. Even the times, half time is coming out in 1978 and June 1st. Right? So this is why, what I'm showing you guys right now is how well do we need to know this history? You got to know this history well so you don't shake. That's the key. One of the big things that I just, it was such a small proverb, but I was just like, dang, know history and you will not shake. Just got to know history clearly. In our hearts, think about this. In our hearts, we have seen something make history in front of our eyes. We've seen the miracles that he's done. We heard the word that's so powerful. Yet, when we start to read or listen to those against us, sometimes you go into a deep rabbit hole and you start to doubt a little bit. And sometimes we end up going too deep into a hole that it ends up hurting our faith instead. So, it's better to talk to someone who understands the history or study it yourself. Right? So that is just kind of a practical word study I'm doing with you guys to show that just knowing history clearly will allow you to, not be shaken by all the things that we hear on left and right. Okay? Hope that really helps you guys out just to show you how this practical word study of knowing history works. All right? So let's get into our second break of the day.
Down low, 'cause we don't even have to go outside no more, where the rain is pouring and it's thundering outside. When your love goes cold, even if you feel like you're all by yourself, I'm with you always. I'm not leaving by your side. Rain or shine, I don't mind, 'cause I will always find you. Sometimes I wanna hide, but you will always find me. So let's meet in the middle. So let's meet in the middle. Yesterday is gone. Look at what we made. There's some more to go. Don't let your love fade. You're always in my heart, always within reach. Stormy skies are clearing, stormy hearts are calming. Keep going like you tell us, until the end you teach us. Change yourself and make yourself great every day. If you rise above your problems, then you'll change your fate. But I don't gotta worry, 'cause I'll never be late. Rain or shine, I don't mind, 'cause I will always find you. Sometimes I wanna hide, but you will always find me. So let's meet in the middle. So let's meet in the middle. Rain or shine, I don't mind, 'cause I will always find you. Sometimes I wanna
Okay, so let's get into our final segment for today. And like I said, we are going to be switching Health is Happiness and Provi in the media because the trial is today. It's going to be going on today, and I won't have all the information until tomorrow. So I will do Provi in the media for tomorrow instead. Okay, so once again, this is going to be part 3 and very, very important for all of us when it comes to health. Our health is how we sleep. Okay, so everyone, please welcome all the way over there from Australia. This is Julius Miumo with Health is Happiness.
Hi everyone, Julius here, and welcome to the Health is Happiness podcast, where we discuss the ways we can optimize health for a happy life both physically and spiritually. This is episode 3, and today we're going to continue with the part 3 on the topic of sleep. Last week we talked about the circadian rhythm and how important this is as the primary determinant of the periods of sleepiness and wakefulness that we go through the day. We talked about the primary way to control our circadian rhythm by correctly managing the timing of our exposure to light. Today we're going to start off by talking about food and exercise, which are the other two things that we can use to manage our circadian rhythm. So let's start with exercise. We all know how important exercise is, and Sansanim has emphasized it many times. Usually after pre-dawn, Sansanim walks around Womyondong to check the trees and construction work, or he jogs 10 laps around the sports field. Now this is a good example of what we want to do in terms of exercise. The timing of our exercise significantly impacts the cycle of cortisol melatonin release. Exercise causes cortisol and adrenaline to be released from our brain, which makes us alert and energetic. If you remember from episode 2, the cortisol release sets off a timer in the brain counting down to the release of melatonin. So having that cortisol peak earlier in the day that tapers off gradually like a wave is very important so we can get that melatonin release right on time when it's time to sleep. Now, does this mean you shouldn't exercise at night? The answer is yes, you still can, but you should avoid a long high-intensity exercise session, especially at least 3 hours before bed. High-intensity exercise results in cortisol levels too high for extended periods, which makes falling asleep difficult. I'm sure many of you athletes out there who have played a night tournament know what I'm saying. You're extremely tired, but it's really hard to fall asleep. However, if you do some low to moderate intensity exercise, it can actually help you sleep better if it's done at least 1.5 hours before bed. Yes, you will release cortisol, but after 1 to 2 hours, your overall cortisol levels will be lower than if you didn't exercise, and you'll build up more adenosine, hence much better sleep. So you can exercise at night, but not too late and not too intense. However, you will miss out on the benefits of a morning session. Morning exercise can help if you're trying to become a morning person. It pulls the circadian rhythm forward. So what kind of exercise is most ideal? The most ideal is a low to moderate intensity cardio session. A 20 to 30 minute jog, for example, similar to what Sansanim does, or a 10 to 15 minute HIIT workout like Tabata. I know a lot of guys prefer lifting weights compared to cardio, but the reason why these options are more ideal is because cardio pumps more blood and oxygen through the brain. The goal of the morning session is to get enough exercise to get a good amount of cortisol and adrenaline, but not too much to make you fatigued and sleepy later in the day. If you're an athlete and you need to train very hard, it does help to take a nap later. Now let's talk about food. Like exercise, shifting our meals earlier in the day also helps us bring our circadian rhythm forward. The most important meal to bring forward is the last meal. 3 hours before bed is ideal. As for me personally, I tend to eat at 6:30 p.m. and sleep around 10:30 p.m. I try my best to avoid eating past 7 p.m. and make sure to have a proper filling dinner. If I'm still hungry, I'll take some herbal tea. There are times though I may get home late, and in such cases, I'll have a banana smoothie made with protein powder and almond milk. But I make sure to do this at least 2 hours before bed. Now, in terms of what to eat, there's a lot to cover, but I'll save the details for other episodes, and I'll just cover the key points. One thing to really avoid is having more than 100 milligrams of caffeine after 4 p.m. This is very bad for the quality of your night's sleep. Second, if you find yourself crashing a lot around midday or after lunch in the afternoon, please check whether the carbs you're eating are low GI, high fiber carbs. These are the ones that you want to eat. There's a lot of crashes that happen as a result of eating carbs that spike and crash your blood sugar. Most breads and certain types of white rice are good examples. I would avoid them altogether for breakfast and eat only very small amounts for lunch if there are no other options. In terms of dinner, it's best to avoid all fat and meat that is difficult to digest, like red meat. Bonus tip, your body is much more likely to store fat eaten at night rather than daytime. Now, finally, let's talk about the special superpower called the power nap. This is the weapon of choice when that moment in the day comes, when we face the hordes of adenosine hell-bent on toppling our tower of productivity. But like any weapon, it needs to be mastered and used wisely. From last episode, I mentioned adenosine is a byproduct created from the body using up energy. Adenosine buildup inhibits neural activity, causing drowsiness. With power naps, we can break down this chemical and eliminate our sleepiness. Before I continue, I would like to thank you all for your awesome questions in the comment section in the last episode. There was one person who asked a good question about whether power naps actually relieve physical and brain fatigue, even though it takes away the sleepiness by breaking down adenosine. The answer I gave was yes, but not completely. A short power nap, say 30 minutes or less, is like refueling your car about a third full. But your core sleep that happens at night is like taking the car to the garage for maintenance, repairs, as well as refueling the tank to full. This is because there are four stages of a sleep cycle, and a short power nap will only enter the first or second stage. There are certain things the body does in each stage, and the last two, deep sleep and REM, are arguably the most important. One cycle is roughly 90 minutes, so you may go through 4 to 5 of them during your core sleep. If you're an elite athlete who has multiple training sessions in a day, doing a 90 to 100 minute power nap is very beneficial for recovery. Suppose you slept only 3 hours the previous night. Also, doing a power nap for the duration of one sleep cycle will work really well. So, how do we get a good power nap? The very first thing that really helps is blocking out noise and light by using a very good sleeping mask and earbuds. Any bit of light will interfere with you sleeping faster, so you want it to be as dark as possible. Next thing that can help is doing some breathing exercises to help you relax. You can try what's called the 4-7-8. So first, you take a deep breath slowly over 4 seconds, hold for 7 seconds, then release slowly over 8 seconds. Start off with 2 to 3 sets and work your way to 8 sets as comfortable as you feel. This third point is really key to getting better at power napping. So what you have to do is practice waking up so it becomes reflexive. For 2 weeks every day, set a timer for 10 minutes. Ideally, the time you actually want to schedule your nap. And try to sleep. As soon as that timer rings, wake up and get off the bed immediately. Do this consistently every day for about 2 weeks. Then your body will start adapting, and naturally, you should be able to fall asleep faster and wake up more easily from your power nap. After the 2 weeks, try and extend your power nap to 15 minutes or 25 minutes, or just keep it to 10 minutes, depending on how you feel when you get up. One thing to note is that you need to have a minimum of 2.5 hours between your nap times. Otherwise, it will be really hard to wake up. It is best to nap earlier in the day, no later than 4 p.m. And don't do more than 3 in a day, in order to avoid interfering with your core sleeping time. So now that we've covered the key areas about sleep, next time I'm going to talk about certain tools we can equip ourselves to optimize our sleep quality even further. Some I've mentioned already, like wearing a really good sleeping mask and earbuds. So that's it for today's episode of Health is Happiness. If you have any questions, I'm looking forward to reading them in the comments below. Thanks again for tuning in, and see you next time.
And thank you so much, Julius, for another wonderful episode of Health is Happiness. This is a rerun, but I thought this was super important as sleep is one of the things that a lot of us are deprived of just in life in general. So I hope you guys enjoyed it. Leave some comments below for Julius, too, if you have any other questions, too. And that means, we're at the end of our Tuesday podcast. Hope you guys had an amazing and awesome time. And that means we'll see you guys again tomorrow on the Morning Star Drive on 117.8.
It's the Morning Star Drive 117.8. You soaring up with sky, now's the time, don't delay. I'm sitting in my ride and it's time to fly. So let's realign, just listen and fill your mind.
I'm burning with desire and the passion.